The market was pretty much flat, represented by the S&P and the Dow. The Dow was up 4 points, just barely squeaking out a gain, up 0.01%. The S&P was up 0.16, up 9 points, but it got a Doji candle of indecision. NASDAQ fared a little bit better, was up just under 0.5%. The Russell was down 0.66%. The VIX was down 1.89%, just above 17. We got consumer confidence came in a little lower than expected at 92.9. New home sales came in just a little bit lower. More Fed speakers. We got durable goods tomorrow. And then Thursday, initial claims, a GDP revision. The fourth quarter currently at 2.3%. Home sales, more Fed speakers, and then Friday we have the PCE inflation data. If the PCE comes in cool, the market may like that on concerns about inflation. Every year it's supposed to come in at 2.5, which was what we had before, and it's supposed to be higher with the core at 2.7 from the previous month's reading on a year-over-year basis at 2.6. Continuing to watch the GDP estimate for quarter one of 2025. Again, it was extremely negative at negative 0.28%. Right now, it's currently at negative 1.8%. This rattled markets earlier. If it starts improving, that could be something that could help markets. There will be another update on this tomorrow. So again, I'll be continuing to monitor this. If it starts improving, this could help the market. Could even see a big rally on it if it does improve. Get the final number until the end of April. If we start getting the estimate for the second quarter as a positive number, the market could just shrug this off completely. Before the recession happened in 2007, we didn't have a negative quarter of GDP until 2008, after the recession had already began. Now, it doesn't have to play out that way, but I'm just saying, you can get a rally of hope and dismiss recession concerns on hope the tariffs, go away or things are resolved. Hope that if something happens, the Fed has our back, and we could see, I think, a rally of hope. I continue to talk about a possible divergence or confirmation of a higher low on the Awesome Oscillator and the RSI. If we end up pulling back, if we come back and we try to fill the gap and back test the trend line, and again, Bitcoin could do the same thing. We'll be watching. But right now, we're trying to clear the 200 period here. We're holding above it with our Doji continuation pattern or reversal pattern, which will be, does the Awesome Oscillator just start going into positive territory and we continue to get green bars and build upon this, or do we see some red begin to show up and end up getting a diversion? So it can play out either way. And it really depends. Do we come back and fill the gap, or do we come back and flip the momentum back from green here and blue bars and a green cloud? Do we flip it back to red and end up trying to test this low? So that's what I've been talking about, those two scenarios. I think the scenario that the bears are telling us right now, the herd, which again, they were telling us a sell-off wasn't going to happen, but they get very, very bearish at bottoms, and they're telling there's no hope. And a lot of people on social media saying, we're going to see the bottom fall out of the stock market as we move towards April 2nd or just after April 2nd. And my guess is you're in a bottoming process. I'm open-minded to either way it could play out, but I keep saying you got a pretty good shot. You've got a bottom in here, or we're about to get one or the other. I don't think we're going to see the bottom fall out of the stock market. I think this is the preview of coming attractions. So right here, again, we've got momentum bullish. Can it remain that way? Can we continue to hold above that 200 period, or do we fall back down? And if we do, we'll be watching the 10 period, the gap fill, and the broken trend line that I showed you earlier in the video. So again, going to be watching the Awesome Oscillator. Same thing for the NASDAQ. Again, we had that failed breakout. The NASDAQ failed to break out above the December high. We talked about that. There was no confirmation. We saw the reversal. Bars have been bearish up until now. And again, we saw some bottoming signals, and we start to see the momentum turn. And here the momentum is turning here. If we can start clearing the 200, we can start seeing more and more signals turn bullish. If we pull back, we'll be watching the gap fill and this low over here. So again, I think eventually we're headed to the 50, and if we can clear the 200, then you can see a big rally headed towards that area. Wouldn't rule that out, because that's what's happened in the past at other market tops. The bears telling us there's no way we're going higher, then they're going to be yelling counter trend rally, back test of the broken trend line, and all the other things. And again, I think that they're going to be ending up covering short positions at much higher levels because I think we're going to go take out these highs. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, please let me know that by supporting the channel today. If you follow the link, it'll take you to a secured site. You can donate any amount you want or make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. But if you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate it. I don't have any sponsors. I turn those offers down. I don't want to sell you stuff. So I just ask that you do what you can to help out. So if you could take a moment to do that, I would really, really appreciate that. The VIX is testing the 200 period moving average. It's below the 50 still, the green line right there. If the VIX holds below the 50, that's going to be very positive for the market. Gets back above the 50, then again, we can try to fill the gap or test this low. So we'll be watching all of that. Risk is that we have more volatility going into April 2nd, which is 1 week from tomorrow. So the risk is we still have volatility. We're still in a bottoming process. Scenarios, we just keep going towards our 50 period moving average and they get some volatility surrounding April 2nd, but then we blow on past the 50 period. Negotiations happen, there's hope, retaliatory tariffs, but then Trump doubles the tariffs and we get a pause on everything and negotiations happen or something like that. Trump walks it back, whatever the case may be. We rise up to the 50 and get some volatility going into April 2nd, or do we drop back down and get a rebound, completing a bottoming process going into April 2nd? So we'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Intraday, we're starting to see some green on the S&P. It's got to be able to clear this cloud right here, but we're getting green right here. For the session, we started to get green, and this is intraday. So again, do we see now bars now go positive for momentum and we continue higher, continuing having a continuation doji, or do we turn back down and end up seeing divergences or confirm higher lows and fill the gap at a higher low or go back and test this low? Again, I think you got a pretty good shot of a bottom, but there's still the risk of those divergences happening on the oscillator and the RSI in the daily time frame. And here intraday, we could see something like that happen again if we turn down and drop back below the 200 period moving average. But we are starting to see some green, are starting to see some things. Got to be able to clear the cloud here, but we are getting the background turning back to green. We're getting the bars turning back to green, the clouds turning back to green, the lines trying to turn back to blue here. Still more work to be done, but again, can we have a continuation doji on the S&P 500? We'll be watching. Again, towards the end of the day, got a green bar. We're getting the green cloud here with our gap from yesterday. We're seeing the line turn back to blue, so we're starting to see some positive things. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to stay this way permanently. We could end up flipping back down, fill the gap, or try to take out the low. But if we can build upon this momentum, we may see the NASDAQ try to get above the 200, and we may see the S&P move towards the 50, move towards the 200 period there on the 60-minute chart and the charts I'll be showing you in the video. There's a daily chart. Again, we got momentum trying to turn, but we got to go a little higher, and we got to flip this around to flip things back to bullish, getting the bars green and getting rid of this red here. Now here we've got the green going on, and again we're above the 200. We get the doji. Got to be able to move into positive territory with momentum. Bitcoin's already done that, and it's holding, it broke the downward trend, and it's above the 200. S&P broke the downward trend, and we're above the 200 as well, but momentum didn't go positive here yet, and then you got to flip the ribbon. We did flip the cloud. We closed above the cloud right here, and you get this buy signal for the cloud. These bottoming signals over here, and then the momentum began to turn. You saw the momentum line turn back to blue. It's still blue, still pointing higher. So can we build upon this momentum and keep going? Or do we try to fill the gap? Or uglier, do we come back and try to undercut this low and end up forming a divergence? And that would mean that we'd see momentum turn back down. We would see the RSI turn back down. That we would see MACD and the oscillator, all of them, turn back down and end up forming a divergence. About these bottoming signals over here, so far they're playing out. We'll see if that continues. Is that marking this as a bottom or just a short-term bottom where we get a counter trend and we end up getting another test of these lows, end up forming a divergence. It can play on either way. As I keep saying, I think you got a good shot of a bottom if you can hold above the 200, or if we come back and back test the trend line that you're going to see in this video and end up just filling the gap. Nasdaq the same. We got a bunch of bullish signals down here. And again, bars are green. We're getting another bullish signal yesterday. And again, we continue to have the bullish momentum, but you got a boatload of bottoming signals here. Little blue B, the little circle there, these little bottoming signals. So again, do we have a bottom in? And now testing the black line, the 200 period moving average. We'll see if we can try to clear it or not. And if not, we'll be watching the gap. But same thing for the S&P, or NASDAQ as S&P. There's still the risk of a divergence if we don't see things begin to turn. But can we see momentum go into positive territory? Can we see a clearing of the 200 period moving average? A boatload of bottoming signals here. Is that a short-term bottom, or giving us a counter trend in a larger bottoming process, or has that marked a bottom and we now start seeing trend signals begin to start all turning back to bullish? You don't have the cloud flipping here, it's directly overhead there. S&P flipped it. Do we start seeing the ribbon turn back to bullish, and we start seeing all these bullish signals begin to take place, or is there more work to be done, or a test of the low that's going to end up taking place? We'll be watching this closely. You got to flip more signals, more of the trend signals here turning back to bullish. Now that we've had these bottoming signals and the momentum line turning back to bullish, now you got to start flipping trend signals and get above the 200 if we're going to mark this as a bottom. Got to be validated by momentum, the momentum going into the positive region. Okay, we had the market close with a doji, a candle of indecision. Slight gain on the S&P 500. Again, still above that 200 period moving average, still above our 20 period moving average as the 10's turning back up. We're getting above the cloud here, momentum cloud. And if we can for low hold, then again, we very well could be on our way back to test the 50 period and our trending cloud, which you can see right here. Now, directly overhead, we have the 50 period moving average, we have the trending cloud, we have the 100 period moving average up in this area. Below that is this gap fill at 58.43. So again, just a gap to be paying attention to. Again, can we hold above the 200? If we don't, then we can back test the trend line of this breakout. Remember, Bitcoin just broke out of a trend line. S&P just broke above this trend line if we include the shadow here. And if we go back to fill our gap at 56.67, you could end up getting a back test towards our 10 period moving average, but still have our low hold from March 13th. Again, told you back then, as we were forming this bottom, that we were going to rally back up to the 200 period. What have we done? We've rallied back up to the 200 period moving average. Now it's at the moment of truth. Do we come back down and get a higher low, or just keep going in a gap? You know, you always want to watch a gap. Is it a gap and go? Is it a gap and fill? Come back and fill the gap and then go on our way? Gap and go, we just keep going in the direction of the gap? Or is it a gap and trap where we gap up and we pull back and we pull back? Whoops, I just updated my chart there. And we pull back to fill the gap. So we got a candle of indecision, a doji. Doji can be a continuation pattern, or it can be a reversal if we do have a gap fill on our hands, or a push down to come back and test this low. And that could still happen if we end up forming a divergence. We don't have to form a divergence. We come right up to the 50 area. If we're going to continue and it's a continuation doji, you got to push into the positive region here and stay there. Okay, and move up into this area. And it may be that we move up to the 50 in the cloud and fill this gap and then get some kind of pullback. If this is a wave one, if we've already bottomed with an ABC and the bottom's in, this could be the wave one. And we have 1, 2, and maybe now 3. And we start moving higher. Be the continuation doji scenario. The doji reversal is that we get an evening star. You've got a wide range bar here above the 20 and the 200. You got a candle of indecision. You get a big red bar reversal dropping back below the 200 tomorrow. And then you start moving back, either to back test right here and fill the gap and then go on our way, or come back and take out the support zone here and right here and undercut this low and maybe form a divergence on the RSI. And that could be a divergence, a couple of indicators. You can get it on the MACD and the histogram. You can get it on the RSI. You can get it on the awesome oscillator. I've talked about the awesome oscillator possibly forming a divergence. So again, we're going to be watching. You don't have to form a divergence. Okay, you don't have to. The S&P, a lot of times it doesn't, but it very well could. So it's something we should be aware of. But again, the further we get away from this level, and again, this 5,500 area, and here we are now, just under 5,800 with today's close. Well, the further away you get from this level, then again, you can confirm it as a bottom, either pulling back, and then getting back above the 200 as Bitcoin did. It came up to the 200, and then it pulled back, and it back tested. At that time, a bull flag, and then it went on its way, and it's above the 200 right now. Or, again, if we just keep going. And again, the best moves don't back test. So we'll be watching this area. And again, when we got above the 200 period moving average there in 2000 and 2001, you started heading back towards that 50 period moving average. And then you got a sharp turn off of that back to the 200. We'll be watching to see if it plays out in a similar manner. Asterisks pushing above 50. So again, can momentum continue? Do we have a continuation doji or a reversal doji on our hands? We'll be watching to see how it unfolds. Again, I continue to believe we're going to get from this low. If this low can hold, we're going to get about a 17 to 20% rise, and I'm leaning towards 20%, maybe more, if we go up and hit my upper boundary of the channel in the weekly time frame. So do we pull back and fill the gap? Do we turn and reverse and try to take out this low, or do we have a continuation? We can hold above the 50 and the 20, and we start heading back to the 100 and the 50 and the cloud for a test to fill this gap at 58.43. So that's what I'm watching. Again, we had that failed breakout back up here. We talked about that at the time, turning off of this trend line. We had a failed breakout. Signals turned down right after that. We got reversal signals, and they've been bearish ever since, up until now, when we've now seen the bottoming signals form, and then we started seeing the momentum begin to form. Now we're starting to see some trend signals begin to turn back to bullish for the S&P 500 and even for Bitcoin to be leading the charge higher. I think this is an important trend line to be watching right here. Again, I have two scenarios. One scenario, again, the herd, extremely bearish at the lows, okay? Extremely bearish. Bears were telling us there's no hope of a rally. We're about to crash, and we're going to see this massive crash going into April 2nd with the tariffs. Now we're getting the rally. Now the bears are telling us, some of them starting to, counter trend rally. It was a rally they told us wasn't going to happen. And if we get a bigger rally, again, they're telling us that wasn't going to happen. Again, I think you have a bottoming process. These are the two scenarios that I believe are under construction because, again, I believe this move is corrective. It does look corrective to me. I believe we had intermediate wave 3 over here. I think you have an A, B, C, and now I think you've had either 4 complete right here, or we've got the blue count where you've got this as 3, you're getting 4 now, and then you get 5 and you undercut this low. So those, I think, are the two scenarios. If we bottomed and we just have a gap and go and we can hold above the 200, that would be a sign of strength. If we go back and fill the gap and back test that trend line I showed you, that would be a sign of strength. It would just be breakout and back test. If we come back down and we start undercutting this low right here, then again, you're moving towards a test of this low right here. But again, I do believe we're in a bottoming process. And as I keep saying, again, the bottom very well could have been here on the 13th of March. We're going to go to new highs. I think this is the preview of coming attractions. And again, I think you're going to see momentum begin to make a huge shift here back to the upside once we complete the bottoming process, or maybe it's done and already started the momentum higher here. But regardless, we're going to see a massive rally, and that's what we've had. I talked about it over the weekend with the massive rally into 2000 and 2007. You had a 10.40% sell-off. Here we've had a 10.5% sell-off, very close to what we had in 2000. It was followed by a quick 17%, over 17% rally. 2007, we had a 12% sell-off. So if we get another push, maybe we get something like that. And it was followed by a over 15% rally. I think you're going to see something bigger. I think you're going to see a move back up to the upper channel line in the weekly time frame. And if our low holds, that could take us up towards 20% rally. And again, you could be going towards 6,600, maybe a little bit less, reach the trend line sooner, or a little bit more if we take our time, maybe 6,700 or 6,500 if we hit it sooner. 17% rally, if we just do what we did in 2000, over 17%, that would be 6,450 if this low holds. So again, I'm looking for a big move up, and that's why, again, I've drawn these arrows over here to reflect that. And again, this could happen over several weeks. It could happen over a few months. It could happen for April and May, or this could drag on into the summer, June, July, maybe August, if we take our time. 7, we got the completing of the blow off top, the final phase of the rally. You got it in about 9.5 weeks. In 2000, you got it in less than a month. Goes by over 17%, less than a month. So again, I don't think that's unreasonable to think that we do something like that again. And usually the blow off top, the final phase of the blow off top, which I believe we're now about to witness, usually is the most powerful move of all. This looks corrected to me. I think it's done. I think we're going to go higher. But then when we go higher, then everybody's going to say it's over, it's over. And I think we're going to be hearing the same thing we've already heard, and that's that there's going to be no recession. The Fed's going to have our back. They're not going to let it happen, and all this other stuff. Just throw a bunch of QE at it, slash rates and so forth. But this time, again, have a bear market associated with the recession. Continue a little higher. You've got the gap here with the 200 period moving average on the 60-minute chart here, the 15-minute chart. Going to be watching, do we turn higher? Maybe we even blow past this upper boundary. I've just drawn a parallel boundary to that. We may even blow past that if the rally can continue. The little tiny diversions that kind of took us down a little bit, and we've gone sideways into that 50 period here on the 15-minute chart. The 50 remains above the 200, and we're holding above the cloud. So again, I'll be watching this gap closely, and if we fill the gap, do we back test that trend line on the daily chart and the 60-minute chart? Do we back test it and come back here? Or do we go up and it's a continuation doji and we try to fill the gap, and again, towards the 200 on the 60-minute chart? Let me show you that. Here's this gap here on the 15. Here is the gap on the 60-minute chart. Again, here's the gap, 58.43, and the 200 period is near there. Here is the gap to the downside, and here's the breakout of our trend line. Do we back test the trend line and fill this gap and come back down and then go on our way? Or do we have to come back down and try to take out this low, or do we just continue onward and upward? In order to turn things around, you got to get the 50, the green line, back above the 200 period moving average. So again, we'll be watching, but could we end up overthrowing the 200? Oftentimes that is the case, and then trying to fill the gap and then come down, or move towards the 50 period in the daily time frame and then come down. So we'll be watching. Do we continue towards that 50 period moving average? And that's certainly possible if we can hold above the 200 period. You got a candle of indecision. Do we go up? Do we go down? More news on tariffs, and Trump comes out and says tariffs, and the market starts screaming and running around with their hair on fire. We have what Trump did earlier, and he starts walking back the tariffs with Canada and Mexico. Yesterday, that's why we had a rally. Hopes of a delay of Trump walking it back, or maybe negotiations. Again, I think you're going to get a rally of hope. How do we know that the tariffs are going to start? Conventional wisdom is all the tariffs are going to start, August or April 2nd, and the bottom's going to fall out of the stock market. And now some of them are saying, well, we're going to rally until then, and then the bottom's going to fall out of the stock market. I think you've got a bottom developing myself, and I think we're going to go make new all-time highs. And again, if you study the topping processes, the last two bull market tops I talked about over the weekend, that's the way it's played out. Now, as far as the L8 wave count, again, this could be an ABC move, much bigger than what we had over here for wave 2. So again, is this wave 4 done? Doesn't have to be the exact same size. Could we have wave 4 in and be starting the first minor wave here in these smaller subwaves of the first minor wave of the fifth intermediate wave? Is intermediate wave 4 done here? You got the 3, the 4, now we get the 5. So that's what I think is going to happen. The question now, is this a bottom? And I think the next sell-off will be telling. Do we go higher and get the next sell-off at the 50, or do we get it right here and now? And if we do, is it just a gap fill or not? We're going to move to take out our March 13th low. The bears are telling us, oh, no, there's no way we're going to rally back up. And we're rallying back up, and I see some people on social media mocking the rally, talking about how weak it is. And these are the people that told us it was not going to happen, that we weren't going to rally back up. I told you at the bottom we are going to rally back up to the 200 period moving average, because that's what's happened in the past. I think you're going to rally up to 50. And if the rally continues, or if we pull back and then the rally continues to fill the gap there, whoops, wrong one, the gap right there from Monday, again, we're going to be going towards this trend line, and then they're going to go back test, and that's going to be the next thing that the bears tell us. And then we'll probably see a overthrowing of the 50, or a turn down off the 50, a tagging of it. And if we get that, if we don't pull back now, if we have a gap and go, they're going to be telling us counter trend rally, counter trend rally. Continue higher. Again, you're going to see a lot of short covering if we continue onward and upward. But again, it's likely we're going to end up getting a wave 1, a wave 2, and probably surrounding a back test where the 50, you'll get the wave 2 after minor wave 1 is done, and then you're going to get that minor wave 3 in intermediate wave 5, and that's going to take us above this high. And again, when we start to turn down, the bears are their heads are going to explode. They're going to just be so excited about the rally they're telling us isn't going to happen, and when it happens, they're going to go, "Oh, we're going to set up a lower high," and they're going to begin to freak out as we get a higher low and we start moving aggressively above the 50-period moving average. So again, under the 200, you had two groups get extremely bearish, and again, the bears got extremely bearish here. Told us there's no way we're going to rally back up, and yet we're rallying back up. And then the herd that told us, at the tops. The December, January, February, there's no possible way we go down. Well, now they believe there's no possible way we can go up. That's what the herd does. Just an important trend line, and again, this goes all the way back to the 2023 low right here. This is our linear scaling. We can see the same thing on the log scaling. S&P is got above the 200 period. We got a Doji, a candle of indecision. We tagged the 200 period here. We got above the 200 on S&P. We tagged it here with NASDAQ. And just zoom out here so you can see this a little better. Again, we filled the election gap, and now we come back to the gap from the Fed pivot. And again, we're gapping higher on Monday, back above the 20, and now testing the 200 here on NASDAQ. Thing. If we can get above the 200 period, you've got your 50, 100 here, you've got the cloud up here. We'll be watching that. You've got a gap fill up here in this area as well with the NASDAQ right here. Near the 20,600 area. So just some things to be paying attention to. We clear the 200 and start moving to fill that gap and move towards the 50, or do we come back and try to fill this gap? And if so, we'll be watching the low over here to see if it holds again with the gap fill from the Fed pivot. RSI coming up to the 50 area. Does it roll over and end up confirming a divergence or a confirmation of a higher low if we try to fill the gap? Or do we just plow on through the 50 area and just continue onward and upward and clear the 200 and start moving towards this 50-period moving average? Do we have a wave 1? And, we're getting this first minor wave, and it's, 1, 2, and we're now in 3, and then you're going to get, 4, 5, and then you're going to get this pullback after, probably surrounding the 50? Or do we get this pullback right now? We'll be watching. Again, do we have a gap and go, a gap and fill? Do we have a gap and go where we just keep going in the direction of the gap, or do we fill the gap and then go? Or do we have a gap and trap when we come back down, undercut this low, and maybe form a divergence? You get that on the RSI, you can get it on the MACD, and you can get it on the Awesome Oscillator. And here is the MACD. Got that bullish cross on the MACD. So again, we'll be watching. But again, back up to these 200 periods. I talked about that at the bottom. Bears told us no possible way that happens. We were just going to keep collapsing. And again, they're going to be very, very disappointed, because I think we're going to go make new highs first, and then you're going to get the collapse. Right now, again, the question right now is the bottoming process done? It could be. We don't want to rule out the possibility of a divergence developing on the RSI or the Awesome Oscillator. And we had the diversions on the 60-minute chart here with the NASDAQ 60-minute chart. And again, multiple point divergences led to this bounce and rebound. MACD got into positive territory. Again, same thing the S&P did. The S&P but NASDAQ, they both got above the 50, and then they tested it a couple times. Now they're holding above it, and we get these gaps. Same thing here. You got the 200 period here. You've got a gap directly overhead at that 200 period. Again, the 20,600 area. Are we headed towards those 200 periods? Maybe overthrow them? Do we see the NASDAQ clear that 200 period before the week ends? Maybe tomorrow. Or do we pull back? And then if we do, we'll be watching the cloud. We'll be watching the gap here and our 50 period here on the 60-minute chart of the NASDAQ. MACD is in positive territory. That's a positive sign. Again, when we went into the negative region and we lost the 50 period moving average, we ended up dropping below the 200. We got the death cross, and we held below that level. Now we're getting back above the 50, but you got to get the 50 back above the 200 to turn this around. Do we come up here and end up getting the wave one and then pull back for wave two if we can clear that 200 period? So do you see what I'm saying? That 200 period on NASDAQ and S&P, really important stuff to be watching. And Bitcoin's doing the same thing. Bitcoin's cleared the 200. So has the S&P. Does NASDAQ join them? And then do we stay above those 200 periods? Say, if again, Trump's moving the markets, and if he starts walking things back, or if there's positive news about, maybe negotiations or something, or scaling back the tariffs as he talked about earlier in the week, giving some countries some breaks, or, the case may be, could the market rally on hope? And again, I continue to say, I think you're going to see a rally on hope. Talked about that before Trump ever said anything, and I told you he might walk back the tariffs because we saw that happen with Canada and Mexico already. And he started to do that again yesterday. So we're going to be watching this and monitoring things very closely here in our 60-minute time frame. Bitcoin's clearing its 200 period in the 4-hour time frame. Again, above the 200, do we see NASDAQ and S&P? And the 4-hour time frame is because Bitcoin trades around the clock. The 60-minute charts are almost equivalent to that. Do we see the S&P and NASDAQ try to get back above their 200 period moving averages? We'll be watching this closely in these gap fills that I've been talking about.